Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, I'm going to give you my predictions for 2021. For what it's worth, right after this. So I think last time I just did the CPUs, GPUs, and that was it. This year I'm going to add software because I think there's some significant things that are going on in with the software that I think might be worth covering. So let's talk about what I am going to try to do. CPUs, just like last time, I'm going to cover AMD, Intel, and ARM. GPUs, AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel. And then for software, we'll just talk about some of the things that's going on with that. So let's get started. First thing is going to be out of the box will be probably Threadripper 4000 from AMD next year. Don't have an exact date, but based on what happened last year, it seemed like when the shoe dropped for Rome architecture, Threadripper released right around in that same time frame. So Milan is not out yet, as far as I know. I haven't seen any announcements from AMD on Milan just yet. But it is imminent. They had it initially on the roadmap, I think said end of 2020. Well, they still have time to do that if they want. But that window is growing short. Most people disappear around at least in the U.S. from work around after the second week in December. It just becomes a ghost town in most corporations here. 7 nanometer and 7 nanometer plus will probably be the architecture somewhere in there for the chip design. That's a guess. I don't have any inroads into AMD to know. As far as the cores, I don't know. Cache, we know that the two caches that are currently in Threadripper will be combined into one. I've already said that, and that was in the roadmap for Milan. So I'm assuming that design will carry to Threadripper. Also, we don't know the TDP because if you don't know the clock rate, you don't know the TDP either. Memory, DDR4 more than likely. Now, that could change, but as far as I know, Milan is still planned to go to PCIe 4 as well. So, but as with all specifications, who knows until they're released. Socket TR4 will still be used as far as I know. Cost, don't know, but I do know it'll probably be in early 2021. So there's a lot I don't know, more so than I do. So I'd probably be safe on this one. Zen 4, release date sometime probably late 2021. Keep kind of the pacing that's been going on with the Ryzen chip so far. Now, it is possible that could slip a little bit later in the year, but who knows? Things get released when they're ready, and I know there's schedules and then it works. So that'll be the 6000 series CPUs that we're talking about. Don't know the number of cores, don't know anything about the TDP, not even going to guess. Probably PCIe Gen 4, although 5 is imminent to be released, so that's also another possibility. That might change things, though, but they haven't scheduled. I'm sure they've scheduled time at TSMC, but they probably haven't committed to any spec yet. I'm guessing. It could be 5 nanometer. It could be 7 nanometer plus. I think I remember somewhere on the roadmap that they said 7 nanometer plus would come first, but I don't know. They could just as easily go to 5 nanometer too. So, but there's certainly nothing pushing them to do that. And this is the problem when we don't have competition, is there's nothing pushing AMD. Since they're now the leader, there has to be somebody that's going to push them, and maybe it's ARM that's going to do that. We'll see. But we do know it'll be on AM5, or at least a socket. I'm just put that number in there. They haven't said that. But the old one was AM4, so I'm thinking, okay, well, AM5 probably is the most logical thing. But we know the socket will change. They've already said that. 2020 was the last year for AM4. ARM. As NVIDIA takes control of ARM, what will the focus on development be? I think is the real question here. Because NVIDIA has a perchant for the server marketplace. ARM, of course, has a perchant for the mobile phone marketplace. So will that focus remain? ARM is trying to move more into the server marketplace and maybe this marriage between these two might be a good fit for right now. The Apple's move to Apple Silicon is definitely putting more focus on ARM. I'm seeing more articles about ARM. I'm seeing a heck of a lot of articles, of course, on Apple Silicon. But there is definitely a boiling interest in the community going on for ARM right now. Definitely. So I think ARM's focus, which traditionally has been, as I said, in the mobile platform, is now going to shift a bit to add focus. I don't think it'll take anything away from the mobile phone market at all, but I think it's going to add focus to the desktop and to the server marketplace, and I'll tell you why when we get there. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 was already announced. They've already talked about it just 2 days ago, in fact, and that's supposed to land sometime in Q1 2021, so we know that definitely is coming. And that is a 780 processor that boasts a 50% increase in performance and 3x in performance per watt. Where did we see that number before? Wasn't it during the Apple presentation on Apple Silicon? Wasn't that that is the exact number, 50% more in performance and 3 times price of performance per watt. So, not coincidental, huh? But 3G performance will be in that chip. I'm not a big fan of 5G, excuse me, not 3G, 5G, but 5.6 gigabits per second on the download side and 3 gigabits per second on the upload side. 4K support at 144 hertz. So, don't know the frame rates yet. That's a question. I don't know what those will be. That could be 20. That could be 25 frames per second. It could be 30. Could be 60. Could be 1. Now 4K actually the spec. If you read the spec for 4K, it's 120 frames per second. That is the spec for 4K. It could be more, no, but I don't know. ARM. So we know that the Neoverse Perseus. This is a different class of machines. This one would be probably more tailored towards server marketplaces, just because it is a scale-up processor. It's called the N2. There's a couple of variants in the Neoverse. There's Zeus, which is the V1. There's Perseus, which is the N2. There's also an N1, which is already out there, and that's the one that Amazon is currently deploying, I believe, with the Graviton 2. So, yeah, that's already out. That's being developed and being used. But this one is slated for release next year, 2021. It is a 5 nanometer die. We know that. It is based on, the bus is PCIe 5, not 4, 5. You have a couple of choices in memory with this chip architecture, HBM3 or DDR5. So, I mean, DDR5 is, let's see, the graphics cards have had GDDR5 for quite a while. So it isn't a big leap to get there, although I don't know if there's been any real demand for the chip manufacturers to start pushing to 5 yet until now. You get into Gen 5 and you really got to push the memory up because you'll choke. I mean, right now the bottleneck on Gen 4 is memory. So yeah, that is the big choke at the moment. So yeah, that has to speed up. The Fabric CCIX 2.0, that's new. The current standard, I think, is 1.1. And CXL 2.0 is the other standard for that. Now, the interesting thing about Perseus, the N2, is it has a wide range of product numbers. And I don't think I've seen the list. I saw a partial list, and it was the part numbers, there had to be 15 of them. But anyway, it starts out at 8 cores at 20 watts TDP, so that would be good for mobile platforms like laptops. And then it scales out to 192 cores at 350 watts TDP, and of course that would be server class machines, something that you would need in a rack with really noisy fans cooling it. Doubtful, well, not unlikely to be in your home, but probably not that kind of a chip in your house. You're talking that 192 cores. You're talking some real money, I'm sure. Use case, it is for scale out compute nodes, and that fits where server farms are going, of course. There's a lot of Linux support. Red Hat, SUSE, Oracle Linux. I'm sure Ubuntu is in there. I just didn't see them mentioned. Kubernetes, of course. Docker on its own, of course, is a big supporter of this. MySQL, which is now part of Oracle. MongoDB, Apache, and there's a bunch of others as well. But for VM support, you have KVM, of course, which is part of the kernel in Linux, and then VMware. I'm sure there'll be others that are coming as well. Will come along in time with it, but that seems like an interesting processor. But I'm sure that I don't know what the pricing on those units will be. Have no idea. And what you will need as far as motherboards and who will support it. That's always the issue. I mean, Gigabyte's been pretty good about supporting ARM, and I think there's one other manufacturer too, just the name escapes me at the moment, but there are two that actually do produce motherboards for the ARM server platforms. Then there is the V1. So that was announced back in September 2020. It's already been released. That's out. We already know what that is. It is a system that is designed for maximum performance CPU. So it's really meant for really floating point vector processing type loads. And in fact, it even has a scalable vector extension called SVE. SVE is not new. It's been around a while. In fact, I think it's actually in the Fugaku. So this is not anything that, it's in the Fugaku, the FX64AX. So yeah, it's been around a while. It just means that you can support vector sizes. Now, vector is a three-dimensional table, and that is common to how supercomputers do computation. Rather than do a row at a time calculation, they take an entire matrix and calculate it at once. Bang, everything at once is typically how that goes. Now, there's times where they can't do that, but most of the time that's what they're shooting for. So the sizes of the vector matter because that's how much data you can push into that and let it process at one time. Of course, the more, just like anything else, I mean, the more you can get done in a cycle on the processor, the faster things run. So it has a scalable vector extension, which allows it to process array sizes from 128 bits up to 2K. Now, I think it goes in multiples of 2. So 128, the next one would be 256, the next one would be 512, 1K, and then 2K. I think that's how it works. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. But typically, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been around HPC, but in the old days of doing vector, that's kind of how things worked. It is a 7-nanometer die with up to 96 cores. So it is a monster. This particular processor is the basis for Frontier, and we'll talk more about Frontier in a bit. So Intel. Intel's had a very bad 2020. In fact, they had a bad 2019 as well. 2020 saw the cancellation of a lot of server-based CPUs, this is sad. I mean, it's sad for me. I was an Intel consultant, which meant that I would actively sell as part of my business. I had my own business at one time, and so I actively would sell things from Intel, like their compilers. And it is really sad for me because I used to have a very good relationship with Intel, and I when they ended the program, of course, that all went away. But I just don't like to see this happen. Not for an American company. We need Intel. We need every one of the players, in fact. But anyway, they released Rocket Lake, of course, in 2020 for the mobile side, for the laptops. And the desktop is planned for 2021. However, a desktop 10 nanometer, as I understand, is being backported to 14 nanometer. So yeah, it's definitely got problems. And yeah, whatever those are, I don't know what they are. They're not sharing them. So it's none of my business. That's their problem to fix. But it is a bad thing to have happen. 3 SKUs that I understand are going to be available: 65 watt, 80 watt TDP. That would be an 8-core, 6-core, and 4-core parts. There's a 95 watt TDP, which is an 8-core parts, and 173 watt to 251 watt. And it sounds like 16 maybe and higher, just based on the TDP. That's a guess. But we're looking at clock rates that's insane, 5.3 gigahertz per second. That is just crazy insane. PCIe 4-bus, Thunderbolt 4, memory DDR4. Again, all that could change, although it's kind of, the PCIe 5 is not finalized yet. Hasn't been accepted as a standard, although that's probably imminent. Anyway, graphics will be XELP graphics, and then that's expected Q1 of 2021. Those are specifications that Intel has talked about, so that's not a leak. That's stuff they've talked about. There is a Intel Alder Lake S that is coming on, I'm guessing late 2021. There'll probably be some significant distance between it and Rocket Lake, although I think Rocket Lake is going to get a different name. I mean, it's getting so confusing to look at Intel, anything that they're doing. I don't know how they keep it straight. They must have a moving board when they come in the morning and sits ahead of your desk that tells you what the current processor names are at 8 o'clock in the morning. They seem to change on a daily basis. So anyway, 2021, sometime in there, Alder Lake is supposed to come out. That is the 10 nanometer part, we hope. It is a hybrid. That is similar to the way ARM does things. So what we mean by hybrid is that you have a number of cores that run really, really fast. They take up a lot of power. And then you have a bunch of low power cores that take care of all the background stuff. And so they're not burning up a bunch of juice and taxing your power supply to be able to do things in the background. So yeah, that is a hybrid design that's supposed to be in there. And that's what they mean by that. There are 4-core, 8-thread versions of that. I don't know what the mix will be. I mean, it could be 2 cores or high speed. It could be a even split 4 and 4. I don't know, right? So, but we do know they'll have at least 16 cores and 32 threads at the top end. Don't know the clock speeds. Don't know the clock speed. Don't know the TDP. DDR5, though, we think will be the memory standard. So that probably will be toward the later half of 2021, just because of, I mean, anyway, I think that's probably the case. Just to get enough distance between it and Rocket Lake. You don't want to be too close because you'll make your customers angry because you supplanted the chip they just bought with one that was better. Thunderbolt 4, PCIe Gen 4, again, that could change. And then it's based on Intel Xe Max, is my understanding. So, general comments on CPUs just to close this out. So, AMD has achieved dominance over Intel in this field in 2020. I think that'll continue. I think Intel is just going to keep slipping back until they can figure out what they need to do to leapfrog, because at this point, they're in a leapfrog situation. They will not catch up just trying to play the game of I'll do exactly what you're doing. They will never catch up. But ARM is a serious competitor to AMD and, of course, to Intel as well. And they will close on both of those targets. Now, the Apple silicon showed that they could challenge for sure the high-end Intel desktop parts. Did they always win? No, but they are definitely challenging. So I think the ARM is a serious competitor there. Intel has delayed the 7 nanometer chip till 2022. That's had some unfortunate consequences with one of the machines that was destined for the HPC, and we'll talk about that. But the Intel server CPUs, Intel has even admitted this. I'm not sure if they admitted it publicly, but it leaked. I saw it. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was basically the CPUs in the server marketplace are not competitive right now. So, and they know it. They know they have a problem. So HPC top is expected to shift to AMD's corner away from ARM. AMD they're in a linkage, a partnership with HPE, which owns, of course, part of Cray, and it's actually a Cray build called Frontier, and that machine is going to be using the latest Milan EPYC chips. I don't know what the graphics processors are yet. It could be the MI100. I don't know. But AMD's 1.5 it will achieve. This machine is designed to achieve exaflops of 1.5. That would be a first. That is 1 billion times 1 billion floating operations per second. And so that's supposed to be completed sometime in 2021. At least it'll probably be up and enough, and have enough of it up and running to be able to run the TOPS 25 benchmark. So that probably will dethrone Fugaku unless Fugaku moves over to the new ARM chips. Stay tuned, right? Don't know. GPUs. RDNA 3. We know nothing. I know nothing. All I saw on the charts from AMD was in design, but probably scheduled for late 2021 just to keep it a year. That's kind of the schedule they seem to be trying to keep. 7+ nanometer or 5 nanometer design is really their choice. I don't know what they've scheduled at TSMC. I do know that I'm sure they're going to try to continue their trend. Now, their performance has been 50% over the previous architecture and 3 times the price, the performance per watt. So that's what they have been holding to pretty steadily. So can they continue it? That's the question. Don't know. We'll get to it. I'm going to say that. I'll hush. But CES 2021 may have additional information. I don't know. No, it's too far out. The crystal ball is cloudy. ARM with NVIDIA's takeover of ARM. So the first question I have is what's going to happen to Mali? I mean, not that I would miss Mali if it went away, but NVIDIA already makes a GPU that fits onto the ARM architecture, and they sell that with their NVIDIA Jetson line. I think it's on the TX as well, which is the older one, but it definitely is on the AGX, the Jetson AGX, the Jetson AGX Xavier, and those are two different things. Those are two different models. The AGX is a year older than the Xavier, which came out last summer, and the Jetson Nano. So, which has been out now for a couple of years, I think. So, but those all have an integrated NVIDIA GPU on them. So, I would imagine if I was NVIDIA, I would just take that Mali and just go bye. We're just going to use ours. The advantage is that NVIDIA already has tensor cores on it, and for machine learning. These machines are all designed to write code for AI. So my prediction is that NVIDIA will replace that with their own. I don't think that's rocket science either. The RTX Hopper architecture is the follow-on to Ampere, as far as we know. Sometime in 2021, I would guess. It is a 5 nanometer. At least we know that they have scheduled time with TSMC for 5 nanometer, but I think they might have also scheduled time with Samsung for 5 nanometer as well. So I don't know if they've made a choice yet which way they're going to go, but I think they're playing their bet. They got surprised. AMD took them by surprise, and when they found out that they were moving to 7 nanometer, and I think that was in May, I think they were just shocked. So it's named after Admiral Grace Murray Hopper, and of course she was one of the first. She was definitely one of the first computer programmers on the first electronic computer, the Harvard Mark I, which was in 1944, I think. Anyway, it's named for her. And I want to share a story with you. I'm going to stop here and I'll share a story with you. I actually met her. I was working for the school district, I think, at the time. It was like early in my career. And I was a member of this ILSEC. It was the Illinois Educators Computer Club, something like that. But she came and gave a talk. It was about a 90-minute talk, and there wasn't very many of us in the audience. I think there's probably maybe 18 of us that came to listen to her. And there's a story that she told then that I've never heard anyone else repeat. You always hear about the nanosecond and the millisecond and the wire, the 11.8-inch wire that's a nanosecond. And you always hear about the fact that, it's easier to get permission. It's easier to be forgiven than to get permission and just do it. And she always has these ones that she always talks about and you always hear about. But there's a story that she told that I have never heard before. And I haven't heard it repeated, so I'm going to tell you what it was. Well, I think when she was promoted to captain, she got a slot in the Pentagon. And her first day there, she walked into her office and it was empty. And there was nothing in it. No desk, no chair, no file cabinets, nothing. And so she walked back out into the hallway and she saw what she describes a couple of swabbies, which just means they're enlisted naval men. And she asked them, she asked him into her office, and she said, "Do you think you could get this office fully furnished by tomorrow morning?" And they kind of looked at each other and they go, "Well, do you want us to go procure it?" And she goes, "I don't want to know how you get it. Just get it and fill the office." And they're like, "Okay." And so they took off, and the next morning she came in and she had a desk and chair and a file cabinet and a table and a nice credenza and a bookshelf, and she was like, "Wow, how did you guys get all this?" And they said Navy procurement. A Navy procurement means that you steal it if it's not nailed down. So, yeah, and that's basically how they filled her office. So I thought I'd share that with you. But that the RTX Hopper architecture will see the end of monolithic GPUs. So, I mean, NVIDIA is following along. AMD has already done this, so NVIDIA is just finally catching up with that. So that is multi-chip modules, chiplets, cache, memory, all that stuff shared across the chip, and that is the expectation for that chip at present. Again, don't know, could change. Everything's subject to change. The XT graphics. This is the same chart as last year, except I've updated it for this year, the first quarter 2021. Could be announced at CES. It's 7-nanometer architecture. All the same specs as last time. This is supposed to go into the Cray Aurora supercomputer, which was originally slated to happen in 2021, but because of the delays in 10 nanometer, which also pushed 7 nanometer out. It's supposed to be a 7 nanometer design for the HPC. That got pushed to 2022 as well. You can't do that now. I'm not sure who that's for. It's probably a government contract. You can't do that too often. They will cancel it. If they did that again, it probably will get canceled. But yeah, it's been in my experience. You don't delay things that far that many times. So this is for them. I think it's either make or break it. But anyway, this GPU, of course, is a general purpose GPU, is targeted for a full marketplace. So some thoughts on the GPU. Yeah, we talked about that already. NVIDIA was surprised by the 7 nanometer design of AMD. I think I was kind of surprised that the AMD, RDNA 2 did as well as it did. I mean, right now I would say that sometimes NVIDIA is ahead, sometimes they're ahead. I think overall AMD is ahead. If you total up the benchmarks and compare them. Now, it just released the 6900 XT, and I think that was today. So that's going to make things even more interesting at $1,000 versus NVIDIA's $1,500. Haven't seen any official benchmarks on it yet, so I'll look at those and we'll see what happens with those. But I've seen what they have said. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. It's an interesting time. That's all I can say in the GPU market. It's a very interesting time. NVIDIA purchase of ARM will be significant, but I wonder if there'll be shakeout. Qualcomm and NVIDIA have not had the best history in the past. Although, when it comes to making money, heals over pretty quickly. So, don't know how that will play out. So, we'll just have to wait and see. Apple will continue to enhance their own Apple Silicon GPUs. And so, I suspect we'll see more changes in that chip when it goes to the higher performing machines like the Pro series of the laptops and the iMac, and then finally up the iMac Pro and then the Mac Pro. They'll have to do something there. I don't know if they'll on the higher end machines. I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I don't see them being able to compete with discrete graphics processors. They're just too fast without actually having one in those Pro machines. So anyway, will Intel finally get Xe Max released? And by the time it releases, will it matter? That's always the question. The longer you wait, the more you delay, the further behind you find yourself, because that race never stops. Those guys are still running, and if you stop to fix something, you're in a race, you stop to tie your shoe, you got all that much further to run to catch up again. So, yep, that's what they say. Software. I wanted to include this because I think there's quite a bit of significant things that are going on in software, and just right off the bat, let's just get this out of the way. 2021 will not be the year of the Linux desktop. Sorry, that ain't happening. Just forget that. That's nonsense. Linux is in no shape or in form to take over the desktop. It lacks. Sorry, it lacks. That's an opinion, and until they prove me wrong, I would love, please prove me wrong for 2021. I would love to be wrong about this. But the Windows market share, we know, will continue to slide downward on the market because it is. It's sliding downward, and that trend will continue. There's nothing to stop it. Apple's Mac OS market share is growing, and I think it will continue to grow, probably at a faster pace than anyone thought, based on the successes that they're having with the Apple Silicon so far. Again, that could change. And the Linux desktop market share is growing a little bit. It's kind of bumping a little bit off of the needle. It's so far down on the peg that, if you look at it, just read zero. I mean, it's only like 2%, 2.9%, 2.6% somewhere in there. But yeah, it's not much. Android, iOS, Chrome OS will continue to make huge gains in the market share. They have been, all three of those have been making huge gains, although iOS has not been making as large a gains as Android, and Chrome OS, of course, is exploding. Open source software, I think, has shown to the corporations that are deploying Kubernetes and container-based applications that it works and you can trust it. And they'll want more of that. Trust me, they will want more of that because that drives their costs down. If you look at all the costs they pay for commercial proprietary software, you pay a large license fee. Sometimes it's a subscription that you have to re-ante up every year. Some of it's based on cores. Some of it has maintenance that's computed in at a percentage of the total cost of the software every year. Those costs become horrendous. Well, guess what? A corporation will want to get rid of, before they get rid of bodies, they're going to want to cut that down first. And open source, since they have seen it, they know it's going to work. I think they have the, as they say, the blood is in the water, and now they will come. And I think open source will have a very good year in 2021. Edge computing will continue to sharply climb. 5G is planning 1 trillion devices. I'm sorry, but there's no way Edge is going to be able to support that and go back to a cloud server. You don't have enough fiber in the ground or in the ocean to be able to handle that kind of traffic. I think fog I think that'll start out that way, with Edge being trying to feed the cloud, and I think quickly. And I know there's a lot of people that think like I do, and they know that fog is the cure here for that. And I think fog will also increase very rapidly, because 1 trillion computers going into as few cloud servers as there are. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. That's what we used to say. That's crazy talk. So just some general closing thoughts before I end this tonight. It's always difficult to predict the future. I said this last year, I'll say it again. The crystal ball, the farther out you get, the more cloudy it gets. And if you don't have information that is supplied by the vendors, and of course, they're going to be tight-lipped about new products. They don't want the competitors to know what they're going to do. So yeah, that's life. One thing's clear to me, this is still an exciting time to be involved with Linux, because Linux will be the workstation that does the development for all of the things that are going to the servers. And there are ARM machines that you can do development on. There are ARM machines. I mean, you may not. I mean, there are a few that you can get that are based on ARM right now that are laptops. Pinebook One being one of them, but I don't think that's strong enough to be a really good, other than maybe just being an appliance that's attached to a back-end virtual machine that has your virtual desktop on it. Anyway, I still think Linux is the way to go there. Like Linus said, you need, I will keep saying this too, emulation is nice, but emulation is not hardware. You guys know this. You don't like it when I'm using a virtual machine to test out the operating systems, because there are differences when you go to apply it to a hardware machine in the wild with all kinds of different devices on it that the virtual machine has masked away. So yeah, it's understandable. And the same thing happens in software development. I don't care what you're developing for. You need to be as close to the platform as you're going to run, period. If you're running on a virtual machine, great. Then develop on a virtual machine. That's all I'm saying. But competition is good for us. Intel, get your act together. Get back in the game. We need you, buddy. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because it keeps the cost down for all of us. ARM and AMD will continue to make strong computer inroads in all areas: mobile, desktop, server, and HPC. When you get all 4 of those, that's a juggernaut. That's what we call a juggernaut. That's where Intel forgot. Intel forgot where they came from. But if they go back and look where they came from, that's where they came from. When they got they got 3. When they got all 3 of those, they started to cook. They started to move. They started to control the market. They just forgot where they were. They need to remember where they came from. Anyway, that's all I had for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sure I'll be proven totally wrong at the end of next year, and I should do something like the PC Nerd does, where you write everything up on paper, and at the end you have to eat the ones that you were wrong on. But I don't think I want to go that far. Anyway, hope to see you all again real soon. Hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe. Bye for now.